My name, calling all night. I can pull the wool while I'm being polite. Like, darling, calling all night. I can be a bull while I'm being polite. Like, oh me, oh my. I know many women wanna be in my life. Like, oh me, oh my. Why can't every woman end up being my wife?
Elijah Cobb, and I'm interviewing my grandfather, John Howard. He was a resident here in Texas during the Civil Rights era, and I was going to ask him a few questions about what racial tensions he had during this time period. So, Papa, what was your involvement with the civil rights? Like, how were you a contributor to that?
I had no real contribution to it except as a result of what was going on and working and in, especially in school during the initial phases of it, where we were able to integrate some of the stores and restaurants and able to make a real statement about the inequality that we faced as black people. And such things as a movie theater, having to go upstairs, go outside to go upstairs and go to a movie theater, or simply eating at a restaurant, one of the better restaurants. You couldn't go in, and they were very hesitant to allow you in, and it's just nerve-wracking and part of the times that we lived under.
Oh, okay. Well, that's certainly a thing that we don't see nowadays. Honestly, me as myself, I don't see that at all. I'm quite fortunate for that. But another thing I wanted to ask you was that you participated in the the Vietnam War.
Yes.
What was your standing? Like, what was your classification?
Yeah, I was a lieutenant, first lieutenant. I was in charge of an infantry platoon, a regular combat platoon. And after that I became the XO in the battalion. But mainly I had 40 men under me. We had combat missions for 5 to 6 months before they rotated us back to a rear assignment. Most of the men stayed in the field, even though officers were able to rotate.
Oh, so you were an officer?
Yes, I was.
Okay, so were you probably the first generation of black officers?
No, probably the second or third, because World War II had some black officers, the Tuskegee Airmen,
yeah, right.
And some of our professors at school had experiences with that group of black officers. We were not in that. We were after that. Of course, my ability to be an officer was a result of ROTC.
Oh, okay. So how long did it take you to acquire this position? Or did you...
Well, it was 4 years of college going through the ROTC program, and then being commissioned in Fort Benning, Georgia. So it was a gradual period, but during the 4 years that I was in school, we did the basic elementary things to become an officer, and then the officers training school in Fort Benning for the infantry is where I got my commission.
Okay, so was it hard being black going through this?
It was difficult because you were often the only, you very well dispersed. In Vietnam, there were very few black officers or even non-commissioned officers. There were many black enlisted people. But you had a lot of problems with assignments, with equipment, with weapons, to look at other units, what they had compared to what we had. As far as ROTC was concerned, we didn't know any better because that's all they gave us. But we could go down the road, you could go to the state university, and you could see that they had a lot more things than we did. And it was discouraging, but we just thought that's the way things were. And we accepted it for what it was. Not because it was the best we could do, but it was a situation we had to deal with.
Okay. So after the war, obviously you survived. If I wouldn't be here if you didn't. I wanted to talk about maybe the Jim Crow laws that were on the home front.
There were a lot of stores that didn't want you to shop there, and they would make it quite well known you'd have to wait for a clerk to approach you, and others were, white people could come in the store and after you, and they'd get waited on. Or they'd drop you just standing there to get somebody else. Then you'd have things such as the buying gas. You could buy the gasoline, but you couldn't go in the store to eat at the restaurant. That was prevalent quite a bit, so we knew where we could go in order to get the right kind of service. Some of the difficulty was the fact when you were traveling, you saw a service station and you just wanted to get gas, but as a result of having to travel 2 or 3 hours at a time, it made it difficult for you to get the gas and then have to go someplace else to eat. Quite a disheartening thing the first time it happens to you, being refused the accommodations of eating. We never had a problem with where to stay because we didn't go to hotels and motels.
Right, you weren't allowed in them.
We didn't know that. We didn't venture into that. If you travel someplace, you stay with relatives.
Right.
But there were others who got more mobile, and they saw the problem exist where they couldn't go to the hotels, couldn't get a room. Travel with your buddies, you couldn't get that. I even saw that in the Army where we would, I had a car, and the other guys didn't have a car, were in training. And, hey, Howard, let's go out, and they would buy everything. But then went to one club, and they decided they weren't going to serve me. And all the ROTC guys, all the Army guys got together and said, hey, we'll clean the place out. We just won't serve. And so they had to change their policies in local communities not because of blacks, but because whites wouldn't let them get away with that. And that's some of the things that people have to remember, that a lot of the civil rights movement was supported by white people who took a stand. And we benefited from that. Not that all of them were able to do that, right. But it was difficult for local people to see that and to see a person being accepted by outside whites rather than the local whites. So it made a real big impression on us, and it helped us to really matriculate much better when we got jobs.
Well, I also was random thought. You had any run-ins with potential KKK people, or was that not a thing?
Not as a direct result, but there was an occasion after school where we went to Arkansas for a wedding across in Arkansas, and then leaving the wedding on that Sunday, that evening we saw all this traffic jammed up, and we didn't know what was going on. We thought maybe it was a revival. It was Sunday afternoon, and we passed the site where there was a cross burning, and this big rally was held in Arkansas, and it was dead silence in our car for about 5 miles after we passed the site because of the symbolic meaning of what that cross represented. Now, nobody was being punished,
right?
But it was just the idea.
It's the message.
The message and the outward appearance of the Klansmen, all in their regalia, no police to dissuade them, and no one bothered us because we didn't make ourselves conspicuous, but it was a nerve-wracking, very frightening experience to go through that while you're right there in traffic.
So how old were you at the time?
I was 21, 22.
Oh, wow.
So it was not something that a young person should have to experience.
Yeah, I can only imagine. I don't think I could handle that.
Well, you make adjustments as you go through life.
Well, I really appreciate you sitting down with me today and answering some of my questions. I appreciate that, and that's all I have for you today.
Very good.